Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay to mold me man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me? Paradise Lost. Dedication. To William Godwin, author of Political Justice and Caleb Williams. These volumes are respectfully inscribed by the author. Preface. The event this story is built on has been treated by Dr. Darwin and by some of the physiologists writing in Germany as something not entirely outside the bounds of possibility. I do not mean to suggest that I give the idea any serious credit myself. And yet, in taking it as the foundation for a work of imagination, I have not thought of myself as simply weaving together a string of supernatural frights. The event at the heart of this story is not weighed down by the usual limitations of a tale of ghosts or enchantment. What recommends it is the novelty of the situations it explores, situations which, however impossible as physical fact, offer the imagination a vantage point for examining human passion that is wider and more commanding than anything the ordinary course of real events could provide. I have tried, in this way, to stay true to the basic truths of human nature, while allowing myself real freedom in how I combine them. The tragic poetry of ancient Greece follows this same rule. So does Shakespeare in The Tempest and A Midsummer Night's Dream. And so, above all, does Milton in Paradise Lost. Even the humblest writer of prose fiction, hoping to give or receive some pleasure from the effort, may claim this same license, or perhaps it is better called a rule, the very one that has produced, in poetry, so many exquisite combinations of human feeling. The idea for this story came to me in an ordinary conversation. It began partly as a way to pass the time, and partly as a way to test some untried resources of the mind. But other motives joined these as the work went on. I am by no means indifferent to how any moral tendencies within it might affect the reader. My chief concern, though, has simply been to avoid the enervating effect so common in the popular novels of our day, and to show instead the loveliness of family affection and the excellence of virtue held in common by all people. The opinions that arise naturally from the character and situation of my hero should not be taken as my own settled convictions, nor should any reader draw from these pages an argument for or against any philosophical doctrine whatsoever. There is one more thing that gives this story a particular interest for me. It was begun in the very grand country where much of it takes place, and in the company of people I can never stop missing. I spent the summer of 1816 in the countryside near Geneva. The weather that year was cold and wet, and in the evenings we would gather around a blazing fire and pass the time, now and then, with German ghost stories that happened to fall into our hands. These tales stirred in us a playful wish to try our own hand at the form. Two friends of mine, and a story from the pen of either of them would find a far warmer welcome with the public than anything I could ever hope to produce, agreed, along with me, that each of us would write a tale founded on something supernatural. But the weather turned fine again, and my two friends soon left me for a journey through the Alps, and lost, among the magnificent scenes those mountains offer, all memory of their ghostly inventions. The story that follows is the only one that was ever finished. Percy Bysshe Shelley.
Letter I. To Mrs. Saville, England. St. Petersburg, December 11th, 17. You will be glad to know that no disaster has marked the start of an undertaking you viewed with such grim forebodings. I arrived here yesterday, and my first task is to reassure my dear sister of my well-being and of my growing confidence in the success of this venture. I am already far to the north of London, and as I walk the streets of Petersburg, I feel a cold northern wind on my cheeks that braces my nerves and fills me with something like joy. Can you understand that feeling? This wind, which has traveled all the way from the regions I am heading toward, gives me a foretaste of those icy climates. Carried along by this promising breeze, my daydreams grow more vivid, more urgent. I try and fail to convince myself that the pole is a place of frost and desolation. In my imagination, it always appears instead as a land of beauty and delight.
There, Margaret, the sun is visible always, its wide disk just grazing the horizon and spreading a light that never fades. There, and here, sister, you must allow me to trust the navigators who came before me. There, frost and snow are unknown, and sailing over a calm sea, we may be carried to a land surpassing in wonder and beauty every region ever discovered on this habitable earth. Its features may be beyond anything we know, just as the phenomena of the heavens surely are, in those places no one has yet reached. What might a country of unbroken daylight not contain? Perhaps I will discover there the strange force that draws the compass needle.
Perhaps I will make 1,000 observations that need only this one voyage to finally make sense of their apparent irregularities forever. I mean to satisfy my burning curiosity with the sight of a part of the world no one has ever seen, and perhaps to walk on ground no human foot has ever marked. These are the temptations that outweigh every fear of danger, every fear of death, and that draw me toward this difficult voyage with the same joy a child feels setting out in a small boat with his friends on an expedition to explore the river near his home.
But suppose all these hopes prove false. You still cannot deny the immense benefit I will give to all of humanity, down to the last generation, if I discover a passage near the pole to those countries which today take so many months to reach, or if I uncover the secret of the magnet, which, if it can be done at all, can only be done by an undertaking like mine. These thoughts have settled the restlessness I felt when I began this letter, and I can feel my heart glow with an enthusiasm that lifts me toward heaven. Nothing calms the mind so much as a fixed purpose, a single point on which the soul may rest its inward eye. This expedition has been the favorite dream of my whole youth. I have read with real passion the accounts of every voyage made in hope of reaching the North Pacific by way of the seas around the pole. You will remember that a history of every voyage of discovery ever made was the whole of our good Uncle Thomas's library. My schooling was neglected, but I loved reading nonetheless, and those volumes were my study, day and night. My familiarity with them only deepened the regret I felt, even as a child, on learning that my father's dying wish had forbidden my uncle from ever letting me go to sea. Those visions faded for a time when I first read the poets whose work carried my soul away and lifted it toward heaven. I became something of a poet myself, and for a year I lived in a paradise entirely of my own making. I imagined that I too might earn a place in the temple where the names of Homer and Shakespeare are enshrined. You know well enough how I failed and how heavily I carried that disappointment. But just around that time, I inherited my cousin's fortune, and my thoughts turned back toward their earlier course.
6 years have passed since I first resolved on the undertaking I am engaged in now. I can still remember, even today, the exact hour I gave myself over to this great enterprise. I began by hardening my body against difficulty. I went with the whale fishers on several expeditions to the North Sea. I chose willingly to endure cold, hunger, thirst, and sleepless nights. Often I worked harder during the day than the ordinary sailors, and gave my nights to the study of mathematics, the theory of medicine, and those branches of natural science from which a man bound for the sea might draw the greatest practical use. Twice I actually hired myself as an under-officer aboard a Greenland whaling ship, and I acquitted myself, I will admit, quite admirably. I felt more than a little proud when my captain offered me the second position on the vessel and pressed me with real earnestness to stay on. So much did he value what I could do.
And now, dear Margaret, do I not deserve to accomplish something great? My life might have passed in ease and comfort, but I chose glory over every temptation that wealth ever placed in my path. If only some encouraging voice would answer me and say yes. My courage and my resolve are firm, but my hopes rise and fall, and my spirits are often low. I am about to set out on a long and difficult voyage, one whose emergencies will demand every ounce of my endurance. I will be required not only to keep up the spirits of others, but at times to hold up my own when theirs begin to fail. This is the best season for traveling through Russia. Sledges fly quickly over the snow, and the motion, to my mind, is far more pleasant than that of an English stagecoach. The cold is not extreme, so long as you are wrapped in fur, a dress I have already adopted, since there is a great difference between walking the deck and sitting motionless for hours, when no exercise keeps the blood from freezing in your veins. I have no wish to lose my life on the road between St. Petersburg and Archangel. I will leave for that town in 2 or 3 weeks, and my plan is to hire a ship there, easily done, simply by paying the owner's insurance, and to take on as many sailors as I judge necessary, chosen from among those accustomed to the whale fishing trade. I do not intend to sail before June. And when will I return? Ah, dear sister, how can I possibly answer that question? If I succeed, many months, perhaps years, will pass before you and I meet again. If I fail, you will see me again soon, or never. Farewell, my dear, excellent Margaret. May heaven shower its blessings on you and keep me safe, so that I may prove my gratitude again and again for all your love and kindness. Your affectionate brother, R. Walton. Letter 2. To Mrs. Saville, England. Archangel, 28th March, 17.
How slowly the time passes here, surrounded as I am by frost and snow. And yet, a second step has been taken toward my great purpose. I have hired a ship, and I am now occupied with gathering my crew. Those I have already engaged seem to be men I can rely on, and they are certainly possessed of unshakable courage. But there is one thing I still lack, and its absence I now feel as a real misfortune. I have no friend, Margaret. When I am glowing with the excitement of some success, there will be no one to share my joy. If disappointment comes for me, no one will be there to help me bear it. I will set down my thoughts on paper, it's true, but that is a poor substitute for sharing them with another heart. I want the company of a man who could feel what I feel, whose eyes would answer mine. You may think me foolish, dear sister, but I feel bitterly the want of a friend. There is no one near me who is gentle and yet brave, who has a mind both broad and disciplined, whose tastes match my own, who might approve or correct my plans. How such a friend would make up for your poor brother's faults. I am too eager in carrying things out, and too impatient of difficulty. But it is a still greater misfortune that I am self-taught. For the first 14 years of my life, I ran wild, and read nothing but our Uncle Thomas's books of voyages. At that age, I discovered the great poets of our own country, but by then it was already too late to draw the fullest benefit from that discovery, and only then did I understand how necessary it would have been to learn more languages than my own. Now I am 28, and in truth, less educated than many boys of 15. It's true that I have thought a great deal, and that my daydreams are grander and more far-reaching than most. But they lack, as painters would say, proportion, and I badly need a friend with sense enough not to dismiss me as a dreamer, and with enough affection for me to try to bring my mind into better order. Well, these are useless complaints. I will certainly find no friend on the open ocean, nor even here in Archangel, among merchants and sailors. And yet some feelings, untouched by the coarser parts of human nature, do beat even in these rough hearts. My lieutenant, for instance, is a man of remarkable courage and drive. He burns for glory. He is an Englishman, and in the middle of all the prejudices of nation and profession, unrefined by education, he still holds on to some of the noblest qualities a person can have. I first came to know him aboard a whaling vessel, and finding him without work here in this city, I easily persuaded him to join my enterprise. The ship's master is a man of excellent character, known aboard for his gentleness and for the mildness of his discipline. He is, in fact, so good-natured that he refuses to hunt, the favorite and almost the only amusement available here, because he cannot bear to spill blood. He is, beyond that, generous almost beyond belief. Some years ago, he loved a young Russian woman of modest fortune, and having earned a considerable sum in prize money, her father agreed to the match. He saw his bride-to-be once before the wedding, but she came to him in tears, and throwing herself at his feet, begged him to release her, confessing, as she did, that she loved another man, one too poor for her father ever to accept. My generous friend calmed her fears, and once he learned the name of the man she loved, he gave up his claim to her at once. He had already bought a farm with his savings, on which he had planned to spend the rest of his life. But he gave the whole of it to his rival, along with what remained of his prize money to help him buy stock, and then went himself to ask the young woman's father for his blessing on her marriage to the man she loved. The old man refused outright, believing himself bound in honor to my friend. And so my friend, finding the father immovable, left his own country, and did not return until he heard that his former love had married the man of her choosing. What a noble fellow, you will say. And so he is, though he has spent his whole life aboard a ship, and scarcely has an idea in his head beyond rope and rigging. But do not think that because I complain a little, or because I can imagine a comfort for my labors that I may never actually know, I am wavering in my resolve. My resolve is as fixed as fate itself. My voyage is only delayed now until the weather allows me to sail. The winter has been dreadfully harsh, but the spring looks promising, and is said to have come remarkably early this year, so that I may perhaps sail sooner than I expected. I will do nothing rash. You know me well enough to trust my caution and good judgment whenever the safety of others is placed in my care. I cannot describe to you what I feel as this great undertaking draws near. It is impossible to make you understand the trembling sensation, half pleasure and half fear, with which I am preparing to set out. I am bound for unexplored country, for the land of mist and snow. But I will kill no albatross, so you need not fear for my safety on that account. Will I see you again, after I have crossed vast seas and returned by way of the southernmost tip of Africa or America? I dare not hope for such success, and yet I cannot bear to imagine the alternative. Write to me whenever you can. I may receive your letters, though it is far from certain, at moments when I need them most, to keep up my spirits. I love you very dearly. Remember me with affection, should you never hear from me again. Your affectionate brother, Robert Walton. Letter 3. To Mrs. Saville, England. July 7th, 17.
My dear sister, I am writing you a few hurried lines to let you know I am safe and well along on my voyage. This letter will reach England by way of a merchant ship, now homeward bound from Archangel, a ship luckier than I am, since I may not see my native land again for many years. Still, my spirits are good. My men are bold and seem resolute in their purpose, and even the sheets of floating ice that constantly drift past us, warning of the dangers that lie ahead, do not seem to trouble them. We have already reached a very high latitude, and though it is the height of summer and not as warm as in England, the southern winds, which carry us quickly toward the shores I long so much to reach, bring with them a warmth I had not expected.
Nothing has happened to us yet worth putting in a letter. 1 or 2 hard gales and the breaking of a mast are the kind of accidents experienced sailors barely think to mention, and I will be well content if nothing worse befalls us before the voyage is through. Farewell, my dear Margaret. Be assured that for my own sake as much as yours, I will not carelessly risk any danger. I will be calm, patient, and careful. Remember me to all my friends in England. Most affectionately yours, R.W.